This week's throwback review was suggested by Diego Gavin. Suggested we do Final Fantasy Spirits Within. So, with that said, I've never seen it. Came out July 11th, 2001. I've never played a Final Fantasy game. The movie was boring. I did not like it. It was a grind getting through this thing. I put it in, and immediately I was already drawn in with the effects, the CG, the animation of everything. Already caught my attention. Like, okay, this is gonna be good because these things look really real, like phenomenally real. It's kind of like one of those things when you play like a PlayStation game or PlayStation 2 game, and the cinematics were always like super badass, and the game was like blocky and clunky. So you want to see more of that. And that's what they did. They just took something like that and was like, we're gonna make a movie out of it. So the look, very captivating, very like, it pulls you in because you're like, dude, like there was times where when I'm kind of watching this, I'm kind of like, double take, does that look real? Double take, does that look real? There are certain elements of it to where you kind of had to give it a double take. Like, is that a real thing or is that like a computer thing? It's all computer.
I'm really glad that we chose this movie, that whoever it was that left the comment had suggested this movie for a couple reasons. One, I am a huge Final Fantasy fan. I grew up on these games. I still love these games. They're at the top of my list for game franchises. And that's a big deal. Some of these games have major effects on my growing up. 7, for example. So, I had already seen Spirits Within when it came out. Going back, I was curious to see it again with fresh eyes, having a bit more experience with movies, being a lot more mature than when I saw it. I was hoping it was going to be a different experience, especially hearing that one of our co-hosts, Eddie, as you will hear, really likes the movie. So, I went into this movie with an open mind. Oh my god, I was bored. It has nothing to do with Final Fantasy, absolutely nothing. They didn't even Easter egg anything in the movie. I mean, there's nothing in the movie about anything Final Fantasy, which is really weird. It's like if you're making a movie and making it part of a series, and that series has regular themes running through it, but they have new stories, you kind of need to pick at least one of those themes to be a Final Fantasy movie. The future Final Fantasy movies did. I'm not sure why this one didn't. It had like nothing to do with it.
Final Fantasy The Spirits Within is one of the most unique and original films in my lifetime. It's a adult animated film and computer animated film. Not a lot of those out there. Given that it was released over 15 years ago, you would think that it couldn't possibly look that good being a computer animated film. Well, it still looks pretty darn amazing, I have to say. The visuals are really spectacular in this film, both from the perspective of looking at the human characters, the aliens, the world that they live in, the design. It's really a feast for the eyes. The visuals are just incredible.
I saw this movie back in 2001 when it was released in the movie theaters, and I enjoyed it then and I still enjoy it now. A lot of people didn't care for it. I think part of the problem is because you're expecting it to be more of a shooter with a lot of action, and it certainly had that, but it also had a pretty thoughtful story, and there was a lot of talking, which a lot of people don't care for, but I really enjoyed it. It was a pretty complex story that kind of said something about doing the right thing even when you're not sure it's the right thing.
Story is not hard to follow. It's pretty simple story. It's just, I felt getting from point A to point B to point C was just kind of like, they had the idea there, but they didn't know how to get there. It's kind of like, oh yeah, these phantom spirit things, like, yeah. They never really explain like the fact that they like do the tentacle thing and then like they grab your soul. And it's like, does it feed them? Are they eating it? Does it give them power? Just questions, like so many questions that I had watching. I'm just kind of like, maybe I should talk to somebody who's played the games because maybe there might be a correlation that I don't know about. But yeah, very slow grind. I was just like, oh.
The story just wasn't convincing for me. The whole spirit aliens and they're fighting them, and they have the horrible, horrible bad guy that is the very definition of mustache twirling. I'm not going to listen to any of the intellectuals. I just want to blow everything up. It's like, are you kidding me? That's the depth you're putting in this story? Plus, it has video game tropes all over it. I mean, we have 5 items. We need to collect 3 more to complete it, and there's a timer, and it's just cheesy. I felt the acting was horrible. Now, granted, it's very possible that they got some pretty big actors. So it's possible these big actors just don't know how to voice act. They need to just act. But it was really bad. There were a couple scenes I actually laughed out loud. I never do that.
The best part for me actually is the acting. Now, it's animated, so you might be thinking, well, how's that possible? Well, you've got a clever script, good dialogue, delivered by great actors that have a lot of rapport with each other. The lead characters, we have Ming Na, spin-off from Mulan. We have Alec Baldwin. Then we have our awesome supporting characters. Roz from Frasier in a rare moment for her. We also have Steve Buscemi. We have Ving Rhames, Donald Sutherland, James Woods. Very strong cast all around.
I found the monsters in this movie, the phantoms, to be interesting. I like the world. It's set in a post-apocalyptic Earth, and that always fascinates me.
You got a lot of talent. There's a lot of talent, so it's not like the movie was a waste. It's not like it's oh my god, like, can't believe. No, the talent is there. The look is there. It's just, for me, I don't know. It's just something with the story. I wasn't buying into it. It was very hard for me to just be like, yeah, this is exciting.
The animation actually held up pretty good. I will give it that. It's a little rough around the edges, but what they tried to do, actually, I thought it held up really well. I mean, the new Final Fantasy film, Kingsglaive, if you were to put those right next to each other, aside from the fact that the new Final Fantasy film is actually a Final Fantasy film, so it's very different. Graphically, it's not that big of a leap. I actually thought it looked pretty good in most cases. There are some issues where some scenes that the characters do sit weird, but overall it looked really good. I think it was the first time that I could think of where they did a major motion picture in that video game CG style, which I can appreciate. I appreciate what they tried to do. What I don't appreciate is making a movie tied into a franchise that you didn't even bother showing any care for the franchise at all. I also don't care about a story that's all over the place, and I'm not even really sure I understand the ending. We were talking about it at the theater before Great Wall, and I feel like none of us really get what happened. It's like there's the Phantom, and they have the 8th spirit in the Phantom, and then that Phantom gets blown up. So they say it's gone, and then it's like all of a sudden it's within her, and she just knows it's within her. How did it get in her? They never answer that question. It doesn't make any freaking sense. Did she have it all along? Was it in her heart? It doesn't make any sense. It was just stupid.
The score, if this movie, is absolutely epic. One of my favorite scores of all time. Elliot Goldenthal, I think, really outdid himself with the music for this film. It's amazing by itself. It's amazing with the visuals. You pair up the acting, the visuals, the music. It's a very moving film. It's very different, too, because it bills itself as a sci-fi actioner, and it tends to take a turn towards the spiritual. I don't know how everyone will react to that, but I certainly enjoyed it a lot. It has a lot to say. It has a lot of themes in it, and visually it's overwhelming you, so you're not too bored with some of what some people might consider to be a little bit of preachiness.
If you're a Final Fantasy guy, I'm sure it's one of those things like, you watch it, you love it. Just like the Resident Evil movies and the CG ones, I've seen them all, have them all, except the newest one. But it's just one of those things. It's if you're part of a franchise thing, you're gonna like it by default. So just for me, story was slow, very slow. The look was amazing. The feel of it was amazing. The acting, the voice acting was amazing. It's just that grind. So if this were to come out today, I'd probably give this a 6 out of 10. No, you know what? 6.5 out of 10. We'll go 6.5 out of 10, just for the look and the acting. Other than that, it's just, I didn't enjoy it. It wasn't an enjoyable experience for me. It was just very frustrating.
I'm gonna give this movie a 4 out of 10. Really boring. I tend not to give movies that low of a score because I try to find the good in movies. Because even a bad movie, you can still enjoy yourself to a certain point. But my God, I was bored. I was really, really bored. And I almost take personal offense to the fact that it's nothing to do with Final Fantasy. As a fan of the series, I feel it's almost a slight that they would use that name to promote their film and not give anything back to the fans. It's just wrong.
Some of the animation hasn't held up that great over the years. The villain antagonist of the film is a little too broadly drawn and can be a little bit too much of a cliche. So it's not a perfect film, but it's one of a kind, very unique. We didn't have a movie like this before it was made. We really haven't had one since. Hopefully in the future we'll have more movies made like this. Huge favorite for me. Have to give it a 9 out of 10.
Overall, I found Final Fantasy really good. This was one of the first movies I had seen with the really detailed graphics. It was similar to a good cut scene from a video game, but it was the whole movie. And back then, this was not as usual. I remember being really impressed with the hair and reading later that each strand of hair was individually animated and the details show. Overall, I give Final Fantasy The Spirit Within a 9. I really enjoyed it.
But thanks, Diego. I appreciate that. Can't wait for the next one you suggested to, which is Stargate, which will be the next one we're doing because he suggested that one as well. So stick around for that. So go on ahead and like this video and favorite it. Subscribe to this channel for more throwback reviews like this one. Go on ahead, suggestions down there below. What should we throw back? What should we review, watch to tell you our opinions? I know we're kind of shooting for before 2000, but anything 2005-ish is okay, but preferably older. So that's what we're shooting for. But what'd you think of Final Fantasy Spirits Within? Throw that down there as well. Maybe I missed something. Maybe it's just because I didn't play the games. Again, I don't know. And remember, you heard it here, not the source.